Hey guys, Tom here from the Investing with Tom YouTube channel. Welcome back to the channel. If you enjoyed today's video, hit like, hit subscribe, and that way you can see future videos as well. So before we get into today's video, thank you all for helping us to reach 5,000 subscribers. The channel is growing far more quickly than I ever thought it would, so I appreciate that greatly. Thank you to every single one of you for watching, liking, subscribing. Please continue to do all those things. So thank you for that. The purpose of today's video essentially is to give you a bit of an update of some of the investment books that I've been reading of late. I did a 2019 top investing books video last year, and I'll leave a link to that somewhere on the screen here. But I think it's a good time for an update. Someone left a comment the other day that they were interested in an update as well. So now is that video. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to mention before we actually get into the specific books on the bookshelf are a couple of resources that are not books in the traditional sense, but I think are actually better than any investment book you will probably find anywhere. You know, we live in a time, fortunately, where the greatest investor of all time is currently alive and still working, and we also are able to, you know, access his thoughts, ask him questions every single year through the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting, and there's literally decades of that information stored away either in written form through his annual reports and shareholder letters, or in video form through the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meetings. So I think those two things, if you were to commit to reading every single annual letter that Warren Buffett has ever written and watching every single year's annual meeting that Warren Buffett has ever written, I think you will have a far better investing education than any book can give you, quite frankly. So that's something I have done. I've gone through all of the shareholder meeting videos. Each of them are several hours long, but it's easy just to kind of put them on and listen to them when I'm at work. And it doesn't take very long to realize when you're starting to learn a lot and pick up things. I was getting to the point where I pretty much knew exactly what Warren was going to say to almost every question, because there's a lot of similar themes that come through year after year after year, and his investment philosophy has just never changed. So that's the first resource I'll recommend. All of those videos are on YouTube, and I think CNBC even has like a Warren Buffett archive where you can go to watch that. So that would be the first thing I'd recommend. Next thing is going through and reading his actual shareholder letters. So that's something I'm in the process of doing currently, and I've also gone and printed them all out. So I've got Warren Buffett's letters 1957 to 1965. Hopefully you can read that. I like to read paper for whatever reason, so I've got all these printed out. 1966 to 1970, and you'll see I've tried to add a picture of Warren Buffett as he ages through the years with each of these. 1970 to 1977. These ones are really hard to get because that's when in the early years of taking over Berkshire Hathaway. So I actually have done a very short video a few months ago on how to find that, and there's a PDF for it. 1977 to 1979, and then I'm currently in the middle of reading 1980 to 1984. That's sort of where I'm up to at the moment. So working my way through that, and I even have the 2020 letter printed out, so lots of paper for me to work through there. But that's the first thing I would recommend, and I think read that before you read any book on investing. That's the greatest resource you'll ever come across. So with that all out of the way, let's get into the actual books that I've added to my collection. So things that are new since that last video. There's a couple here that I still actually haven't read, and the big one is this one, Titan. This is a giant biography on John D. Rockefeller, probably the richest man in history if you account for inflation and everything. So this was a book that I've heard Charlie Munger recommend several times. It's one I've still never got to, frankly, just because of the size of it. It is 600 or 700 pages. The words on here are very, very small, and I feel like if you made all the words the size of a normal book, this would probably be like 1,500 pages. So I need to get to that at some point. Great business leader, uber successful, so I need to get to that at some point. So sorry I can't give you many thoughts on that one, but the next one I have is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. So I need to give a shout out to Liz, who is a subscriber and hopefully watching this video. Liz sent me a book voucher, and I very much appreciate that, and I went out and bought 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel with that voucher. I really like this book, so if you're even remotely interested in the businesses that I probably don't talk about all that much, which are more in the startup and kind of entrepreneurship world, so what helps a business get going and grow and scale very rapidly and differentiate itself from its competitors, that's a very good one. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. Peter Thiel is a genius, and it has some actually really good stories about the early days of PayPal with Elon Musk and so on. So some cool stories in there, so definitely recommend that one. Getting back to the more traditional kind of value investing books that I like to read, The Acquirer's Multiple by Tobias Carlyle. I've mentioned this book in a couple of videos already, and I really liked it. So essentially, Tobias Carlyle is a value investor. He has his own YouTube channel and podcast and so on. But he is what you'd call a quantitative value investor. So unlike the Buffett style, where he's looking for sort of undervalued businesses as kind of a pool, and Buffett used to go for the lower quality, really discounted to intrinsic value type businesses, now goes for more of the longer term compounding businesses. But regardless, he's a little bit agnostic in terms of the types of businesses he would choose through those years. He really just wants to buy something for less than it's worth, basically. So that's the Buffett strategy. The Tobias Carlyle strategy, more of a quantitative type approach, is looking at certain kind of statistical metrics and then buying the cheapest group of those companies. So in this case, the Acquirer's Multiple is a name that Tobias Carlyle has given to the EV to EBITDA metric, and I found the book really good. It has comparisons to Joel Greenblatt's Magic Formula, and showing some of the performance versus the Magic Formula over time and why that works. And it also gave me a couple of new investors that I've added to my list of 13 Fs to clone as well. So really good one there. Another book that I've added, again, this one isn't particularly investing related, but this is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Many of you probably know this and have read this book. This is about basically trying to build a business where you can set it up and work remotely and travel the world, and as the title suggests, work quite minimally to keep your business going, and how you can set your business up to hire out a lot of the basic tasks that need doing to free up your time to go and do whatever you want. So I did enjoy this bit. It was a bit of a grind for me to get through, but I'd recommend it if you're interested in that stuff. It's definitely one I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't run out and buy it if it was a maybe, like on your list, and you had other stuff you want to read first. But I did enjoy it. Next book is 100 Baggers by Christopher Mayer. So I've done a full video on this. I don't need to explain too much on this, but basically going through and looking at what characteristics are there in a typical stock that goes up 100-fold, and how can we identify those companies that are going to kind of be the next batch of 100 Baggers. So I've done a full video on that if you're interested. I only released that like a week or two ago, so go and look that up. Really enjoyed that book. So highly recommended. And we only have a couple more in here. So this one might be a little bit controversial, I don't know. But this is 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Controversial kind of figure for a lot of people, I know. I actually haven't read this yet, so you may have seen it sitting on my shelf there or something, but I haven't read it just yet. I do like to occasionally sort of change it up from the investing books, though. So that's the reason that one's sitting on the shelf. And then the last one before we get to the big boy up here, which is Poor Charlie's Almanac. The one that I'm currently reading is Bull by Maggie Mayha. This is a book on investing, but one that's down a path that I wouldn't traditionally kind of deliberately go down reading. So this is more of like a macro book, and anyone who watches my videos knows that I don't talk about macro or pay a huge amount of attention to macro stuff that much. But this one has a quote from Warren Buffett on the front, and it was recommended by Mona Sprabry, so it must be good. And I'm only sort of a chapter in, as you can see, but it's pretty good so far. So I think definitely going to read this with a grain of salt because I don't want to be sucked into being like a market timer or anything like that. But I definitely am interested in learning about the history of famous crashes and so on. So that's the reason I'm reading that, and that's what I'm currently working through at the moment. She's pretty thick, so I may take a while to get through that. Yeah, often you'll see a book sitting here on my shelf. If it's ever sitting just here, that's the book. Ooh, that's the book that I'm reading. So if you flick back through old videos, you'll often see that some of them sit there for a while before they actually get fully read. So that brings us to the finale, which is Poor Charlie's Almanac. Poor Charlie's Almanac. This is actually a book I'm also still working my way through. This is a collection of stories and lectures and all sorts of things to do with, obviously, Charlie Munger. And it's got plenty of pictures if you're not interested in reading words all that much. I know some of you are still in that camp. And yeah, it's certainly not a book that you just sit down and read cover to cover. It's more of like I guess, big coffee table style book, and that's the reason it sort of sits up here. So really great to just pick up and pull out nuggets of wisdom whenever you feel like you need some. So I've yet to read this whole thing. I've actually only read probably 10% of it, to be honest with you, but it is really, really cool. I've already reread a couple of sections, and every time you pick this book up, you're going to learn something. Charlie Munger's full of wisdom. His kids used to call him a book on legs, so there's definitely a lot of knowledge that's been absorbed into that brain of his, and yeah, highly recommended. Very high quality, like actual physical book as well, so yeah, definitely recommend that. The only other thing to remember with Poor Charlie's Almanac is it is quite difficult to find. That was actually a gift to me for Christmas, and you just got to be careful not to get the Chinese version as well if you don't speak Chinese. So that's the other thing with Poor Charlie's Almanac, and those are all the books on my bookshelf that have been added more recently. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, hit like and hit subscribe. If you've got any book recommendations for me, definitely keen to hear them, so drop them in a comment down below. If you're interested in 2 months free with Sharesight, if you sign up for any premium subscription, I will leave a link to that in the description below as well. But that's all for me today, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit like, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.